So earlier we were speaking about the agricultural sector on the continent. I'm joined by Wandile Sihlobon, an agricultural economist from our Pretoria studios. A very good evening to you, Wandile. What would you say the outlook for agriculture is across our continent?
Yeah, across the continent, Zinga, it's a bit of a challenging one. South Africa, for now, it's looking well on our side. We're estimating, for example, that we could see South Africa's maize production up 11% on a year-on-year basis. But I think that number is even going to be revised up. So it's good here at home. But when you start looking at Zimbabwe, looking at Kenya, and all of these other countries in the far eastern side of Africa, it's not looking well. The issue of drought and obviously the locusts that are spreading there, this is what seems to be challenging. We expecting poor yields, but more will still transpire over the coming months.
When you mention Zimbabwe, we know that they're now importing maize. Talk us through why they're doing that and why it's so significant.
Now, the issue of Zimbabwe, I would say the roots of it start from early 2000s to the land reform that went over there. Obviously, it led to all destruction on the agricultural side. But the most recent incident, it really has to do with the drought in 2019. That drought saw Zimbabwe's harvest dropping by more than half, and the country harvested only about 800,000 tons, and they need about 2 million tons for them to actually be able to be self-sufficient. So they had to import some bit of maize on that, and the lifting up of the genetically modified regulations for importation is really for easing up the supplies, because they're experiencing some tough shortages at the moment. So the drought combined obviously with the fragile agricultural system is what has brought them to where they are.
Let's go further up our continent. We know that in August 2019, Nigeria announced there'd be restrictions on food and agricultural imports in the country. Why is that, and how is that impacting consumers in Nigeria?
The Nigerian government came up with this bold statement where they say they want to be self-sufficient, they don't want to be importing food, they want to boost domestic production. And obviously that was followed up by the policy where they wanted to limit or restrict the outflows of capital for financing food imports. That policy, obviously, while well-intended, it has its shortcomings, because Nigeria is a huge importer of food. They spend roughly over $4 billion importing agricultural products. So far, because of that, we began seeing, for example, you take basic stuff like jollof rice. The jollof rice prices are up 70% from August last year. General food price inflation is running over 11% because of all of this stuff. So I think that for sparking or boosting domestic production, that will take a long time, a long period. But I think for the near term, the current steps have really been hurting consumers. The best approach maybe would be for them to implement import quotas and then readjust those as production increases over time.
Wandile Sihlobon, an agricultural economist, joining us for a very brief but insightful interview on some of the countries on our continent and what's happening in their agricultural sectors. That brings us to the end of the bottom line. Simon is standing by with your sports. Good night.